Hello, tonight's programme is about the young British choreographer David Bintley, who at the age of 26 already seems set for a spectacular career. Bintley's just had a particularly successful year. A few months ago, he was appointed Resident Choreographer at the Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet, in addition to which Rudolf Nureyev has invited him to work with the Paris Opera Ballet later in 1984. Our programme shows the evolution of Bintley's latest dramatic work, Metamorphosis, which was premiered recently, and we also see him rehearsing the abstract ballet Choros, which was one of 2 works for which he received the Standard Award for Ballet a few weeks ago. Choros is entirely abstract, without any story or plot, but it's full of energy and wit. Bintley says that it reflects his desire to convey how it feels to dance. The film starts with an energetic section of Choros in which a Greek soldier seems to be trying to show off what he can do, and not quite succeeding. The dancer is Roland Price, and David Bintley explains the Pyrrhic solo in his own terms while he rehearses it.
Yes, that was dead on. That was right on. No, that was right on. That was right on. Somehow it gives better timing because of that chassé back. I don't know what it is. It's really strange.
Do it again?
Yeah, just try once again. I'll just talk. Keep going, Hill. I'll just talk over the top. Pyrrhic solo was, I was very interested in the word, as we know it, more in the sense of the Pyrrhic victory, which is kind of winning the battle but losing the war. And so what I had the idea was to make a solo where there were fantastically complicated steps and difficult rhythms to dance to, and the boy couldn't quite do the steps that he intended to do, but because he couldn't do them, he fell into sort of increasingly complex kind of patterns of steps, and this this actually makes the solo more difficult than if he'd done a straightforward solo. Still this one, because you forgot just the second time. You forgot on the second one to do the chassé back that way. See, it's really funny. If you turn that way, because you feel you're going to overturn. See, if you do a big step, that's why you're doing the coupe, because you're going like that. You're already round, so you have to do a quick step to get there. That was better, though. Much better. Did you hear the things that time?
I can actually hear them in the orchestra.
It's much easier, much easier. The thing is built in several sections. It starts off like the straightforward classical solo, which is a set pattern, which is kind of a manège around the room, and then a diagonal step, something like that. Some solos have a central section where they have pirouettes. In the Pyrrhic solo, there is every section included because the boy is kind of improvising. And so when he starts at the back, he starts in the discobolus position, this famous Greek thing like this. And he comes forward and begins the step, which looks like, well, we have glissade and a jeté that way. And he goes to repeat the step the other way, but somehow he finds himself with an extra count of music. So he just goes like that. And then he begins the section again. He goes like this. He goes to do soutenu to this corner, to the next step, but he gets off balance. So he falls back this way. He starts falling backwards, and he has to save himself by going this way. And by the time he's got round the corner, he's kind of recovered himself and goes into a kind of swaggery jump down the corner, realizes he's got no further to go, and so the jump goes this way. He actually realizes he's at the end of the stage, so he has to come back. Then he does something which is rather like a pirouette. So he's like pirouette in attitude, and then to the next corner, but he's overturned on it. And so the leg goes this way, and he falls back this way, and then just enough to recover to go on the other angle down to this corner. Then he starts maybe diagonal step, which is like in every classical solo. But it's off the music, because the music has, a 5-beat kind of section, which is very irregular. So he starts from this corner, starts the step, finishes down, and he's expecting a 6 to happen instead of 5. And so he's wrong on the music. So he gets to the back again. He tries this step once again. Again, it's a completely different angle. So he falls off it again, manages to save himself and get back to center. Because the music is so irregular, the actual steps become irregular as well. And the manège, instead of being one circle of the room, as it would be normally, is like something like 1.5, and suddenly the end's on him, and he's completely exhausted by this point, so he just kind of lapses into this kind of thing like this, and to a very surprise ending, because the ending would normally be like bum, bum, dum, ba, bum. But at the end of the actual piece, he has an extra 3 beats in which nothing happens, but he's got through the whole solo, and this is the kind of Pyrrhic victory idea, that he's actually finished it, and it's actually looked rather good, despite the fact that basically he's supposed to have blown it. Chorus began with a musical shape. I wanted to do maybe a 5-section ballet, which gave lots of opportunities for different tempi of dance, different kind of emotional levels of dance. So really it started just with the music. And then, as this is the first commissioned score that I'd ever worked with, we began to realize that that wasn't going to be sufficient. And by that time, we had kind of acquired the idea of these ancient Greek dances.
In this pas de deux, from another part of Chorus, Bintley explores a very different mood.
The Pas de deux was, what I was thinking about was something which had a very kind of bittersweet feeling. My idea was that there was something like a relationship which had kind of gone, something was wrong with it, although I didn't want to specify, but that by the end of the sickiness, this thing had been righted in some way. I don't think I had any choice about being a choreographer. It just happened. It seemed to happen very early on. I think people often think that you start to choreograph because you can't dance anymore or because you can't dance that well. I really started choreographing before I was a professional dancer and was interested in it because it has so many facets, because it's not only the dance technique that you're working with all day, every day, but also there's lighting and there's design and the musical side, which appeals to me a lot. And I really like working with all those separate groups of people. You know, it's very exciting at the last stages of a ballet when you're working with the orchestra and with the stage crew and the lights. Usually on a Sunday morning as well, at sort of 9 o'clock. It's quite a romantic kind of thing, I find.
Bintley's most recent ballet, Metamorphosis, is based on Kafka's short story. The metaphor is of sickness and decay. A young man turns into a beetle and hides from his family and the world. Bintley concentrates on the effects on his father, mother, the lodger and his sister. They all try painfully to adjust to the transformation in this scene.
aside from the ballets which I've been doing recently, I spend all the time with quite difficult music like this, and certainly in the past 4 or 5 weeks, constantly looking at the score and listening to the tape.
Bintley and the dancers spend about 80 hours together creating and rehearsing a new 40-minute ballet. The dancers have no idea what sort of steps they're going to be asked to do.
Let's just...
At this stage, they don't even know much about the music or the themes of the ballet, or even how Bintley has arranged it.
About, like, you've read the book, forget it, because there's nothing like it. Where I decided to start, because I think it's in like 5 movements, and so the first 2 are really concerned with the first with like what life was like before, and the second one is just the kind of change and discovering. So really the ballet starts from about the 3rd movement on, which shows the change in the family over perhaps weeks, maybe months. We started writing this thing maybe 3 years ago, and I was a very different person then to what I am now, so the whole kind of thing has changed. I think the biggest change is that I've reduced it down to a very, very small cast, basically 4 people. Gregor's room is at the end of this wall, so what we have is just a door right at the front of the stage, and a lot of the action is directed towards the door. What I want to feel is that that door becomes really overpowering. And another thing is that opposite the door there's a mirror which ain't going to be there, and I'm introducing that mirror so that people will actually see the changes which are happening, sort of physically, but also I think inside as well. I haven't actually read the book for a long, long time, deliberately now, because I don't simply want to recreate the book. I think there are better mediums which can do that, and indeed have done that. The kind of thing I'm trying to suggest, but I want to get away from all props, so there's hardly any props, is that when you've just had dinner, and I think that you can't have eaten it, so that if you imagine that it's still kind of there, and yeah. Let's just play him.
This is how Bintley starts when he's creating the dance vocabulary on which each of the characters is based. Everything grows out of the music. What attracted you to Kafka's story, Metamorphosis?
I think the beetle, quite honestly, because I thought of this when I was about 16. I read the book at school, and wow, what a great idea for a ballet, a beetle on stage. And but I think instinctively, I've fallen out again. Another thing I've learned from all those 9 ballets, which I did quickly, is that dramatic ballet only works, for me at any rate, if it's right within the amount of time that it takes to perform, if you know what I mean. You can't take a ballet seriously, a 40-minute ballet seriously, if it's supposed to be happening over a period of 15 years, and the leading character has to have 5 makeup changes, and there are 8 different locations. It's ridiculous. It's just not worth doing. With the Kafka, what really struck me was the economy of the characters, the economy of place, and within that, what you could actually do. And what I think Kafka does is the whole world. He does the whole kind of gamut of emotions.
Even with sickness in the house, the family didn't always behave gloomily. Greta, the sister, tried to cheer everyone up, but the monstrous presence of the beetle reasserts itself. The music for Metamorphoses was commissioned specially by David Binley from a young composer, Peter McGowan, who plays the violin in the Sadler's Wells Orchestra. David worked closely with him in developing and planning the score. But it was still a problem to find his way around the music and to learn it accurately enough to be able to create the steps.
When you actually have a new score to work with, I found out that your problems are tripled because a new score, Frederick Ashton always says that if you have the right score for a ballet, there's 60% of the work, and that's very true. And when all you have is a piano score to work to for months and months, when you actually hear the orchestra playing the thing, and no matter how good a musician you are, no matter how much you talk with the composer, look at the score, get him to play the separate lines, the horn line, the clarinet line, it's still a shock when you get in there and hear the thing. And usually it's not what you expected.
There's a rumble here, and then that's more like a ticka, ticka, ticka. It's harder to see from your copy than mine. Have we got a count into that, Grant? To 220.
The choreographer is also responsible for commissioning the set and for hiring the costume designer.
So I think if we come in this door, everybody in this door, I've lost 3 doors because we found them too expensive. So we've got some nice windows now, cheaper.
I think at the beginning David was going to use a lot more dancers, and it was possibly not going to have that kind of more intimate feeling than it has now. And obviously the book, the Kafka book, is set in a series of rooms or one main room, and David came up with the idea of actually setting it in one room with various staircases.
As the ballet took final shape, the set design was completely transformed, apart from the perspective.
The treatment perspective is sort of strange. I've tried to sort of work a little towards kind of a touch of sort of German expressionism, sort of like early sort of German films with the sort of weird perspective, a bit like the sort of originally like Dr. Caligari and that kind of thing. And I think it will work quite well because it takes your eye straight in. And to where David's going to have the beetle or the insect, the actual set sort of drives your eye right to the major focal point.
When I was originally thinking about how we would present the insect, I wanted to get right away from the man in the rubber suit idea. Again, to pare the whole thing down just to a kind of an essence. And so we decided to do that with shadows. So the only time that you actually see Gregor is actually his shadow.
Southbank show, David Bintley, Part 2.
While I've been working on Metamorphosis, I've had to learn Petrushka at the same time, and in the initial stages I was a bit worried because I wanted to do both full justice. Neither of them are things which can be approached half-heartedly, and so I really was working overtime, and at one point I really felt like saying to the management, I don't think I'll be able to do Petrushka's, give it justice. But as a member of the company, and as it was kind of an important part for me to do, I think, I decided that I'd just have to work overtime. Petrushka's supposed to be joined at the knees so that he can't separate his knees, as you see later in the cell scene when he tries to do that. And also his feet are neither flexed nor stretched, and they're not nicely pointed, they're kind of sickled in so they go the wrong way. And the way I try to do it is that I try to make everything look extremely painful for him, so that when he tries to separate his knees, it's not just kind of frustration, but the fact that these legs have been screwed on the wrong way and he's actually trying to make them go the other way actually hurts. And that, I think, is what conveys the spirit as well, because he's not just got feelings inside, but actually his body feels as well, you know? And when he sort of says that the conjurer kicks me in the back and the Moor hits me, you can see that it actually is hurting him, and he's not just wood and plaster. I only think that half of the part is in the steps. They're very, very simple. Again, I'm not entirely sure, but it seems to me, watching and knowing Petrushka, that fucking I don't know, maybe this is blasphemy, but I don't think Fokine had an incredible grasp of the music. And if he did have an incredible grasp of that music, which is very difficult, and for those days would have been more so, he couldn't communicate it to Nijinsky. Because, as we read on the first night, Fokine was behind the flats of the set, shouting the counts and the moves to Nijinsky, who simply couldn't remember them. I don't know how long they had rehearsing the thing, or whether Nijinsky was extraordinarily stupid or whatever. But I think it's actually in the person that does Petrushka. In fact, the whole ballet is, because there's nothing worse than a bad performance of Petrushka, and not a lot better than a good one.
You yourself, of course, are a performer as well as a choreographer. What do you see as the connections between the two?
Well, I think it's important to know the business, the actual business of what it's like making people laugh, making people cry, handling props, wearing beards, how quick you can make a change, how nervous people are on first nights. Just all those kind of millions of things are very important. It's what it's like to work with an injury, how much you can do. That's all kind of good for one's tolerance level as a choreographer. You know, there's nothing worse sort of a week before a premiere when somebody comes up and says, I've hurt this foot, can I just mark it? And you learn to say yes when you're thinking, my God, you know, what's going to happen? But it always kind of pulls together for a first night. That's the main thing. But still, it's enormously nerve-wracking. First nights are horrible. I've done danced in a few myself. And they are really, really nerve-wracking because you know everybody's there and you know that this geezer that you've been working with for 6 weeks is out there chewing his nails off, and the band isn't going to play it that well, and you're not going to get the character across. That's another frustrating thing about choreographing for characters. You won't even see them till they've got the costume and the makeup on, because dancers never perform in the studio, ever. Doesn't matter how much you ask them, how much you plead with them, you'll never get it. And so it's never right on first night, because all they've done is kind of this the whole time. They've never actually physically done the acting or anything like that. So when they get on stage in costume and makeup, and they're not afraid of doing it, they're not embarrassed, that's when they start working on it. And that's usually about, at the most, 2 days before it's shown to the public.
Towards the end of Metamorphosis, a policeman is summoned by the lodger, who's sickened by the presence of the beetle in the house. The policeman sympathizes with the family. The lodger's steps express his anger and disgust. The policeman's steps represent not his real character, but the way the frightened family see him.
Don't move till you hear the quick music, Dan.
Bintley is to understudy the policeman at performances in the future.
This is my second policeman, and ordinary people are really hard to choreograph for if you're trying to get somebody who's really, so you don't have them dancing, you're not a dancing policeman. And so I really was at a loss really how to do it. So we started off with the idea that what it sounds like to me in the music is almost like Sprechstimme. So I wanted to kind of do the same kind of thing in a dance way. So it looked like dialogue and it just bordered on dance, but was kind of neither, not just straight acting or dance, but something in the middle. And then I had this idea that what he's actually carrying out is what the people are imposing upon his questions. Your absolute worst nightmares, this is. So he's everything. He's a robot, he's a monster, whatever. But whatever he is, he's not nice, and he's got to find out everything and ruin the whole show. Well, not literally, I hope. We started off doing something like, very simply like, the music has a little introduction, and then there's sort of clarinet which goes boom, bum, 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 bum. And so we were sort of doing things like, hello, hello, well, what's going on here then? That kind of thing. And then I thought that can't be strong enough. That was before I had this idea. So I had the idea that it would be very odd, and he would do like staccato movements like the music is. That kind of, so you are malevolent, play malevolent, because that's what they're thinking you are. Yeah, so that was okay. This I find awkward, don't you? And this is funny.
It's not really, I don't feel as though I'm saying anything there.
On the next one? On this one? Oh, what I want is that actually is much bigger, so it comes out circular. So, I mean, I don't just want it...
Yeah, that's what I feel like I'm doing.
I wonder if you can actually bring it out, like, circular this way. That's the kind of thing, so it's like... That kind of thing, that kind of idea. Can you put odd angles into it? That kind of thing. So we're never kind of really relating to anybody or anything. It's just kind of that way. And again, kind of... Now we've got incredibly stylized, sort of semi-doll automaton movements. So instead of bowing to the people, which he does, and saying, I was called here to do this, that's when he takes on the aspect of his questions become like really vicious, at least they imagine them to be. So the bow, I was thinking again of like when they do like dream sequences in films, when you have a picture of somebody and it goes like that. So it's the same thing, he bows to the lady this way, but then the bow sort of drops and goes even lower, and then he kind of falls in this way. And when he comes up again, he's completely changed, and he has these like doll movements, but they're not simply doll movements. That's how we started, and I thought, well, you can go out and see them doing all that stuff in the street anyway, all that body popping and sort of gear like that. So it's a kind of mixture, and what I wanted to do was to give him as much variation within those movements so that it would be like speech. So like you're talking in question like this, and then you would say, and I was called here, well, what's it all about? Well, what's it all about? So it's like that kind of thing. He has these kind of movements, which are kind of wheedling. Then he turns back and has a movement like this. And so this is all like in the minds of the people, and they're all reacting to this. And then the point is that when he sees the insect, again, there is a change, partly because it's shut him up, actually, seeing this thing, but partly, I think, because his character is one that he recognizes that the lodger is being sort of vitriolic, and that he's actually trying to hurt this people through their own kind of misfortune. And so being the nice chap that he is, he just pretends to have seen nothing. And of course, in changing, in asking no more questions or anything, he kind of loses that horrific kind of aspect that he had before.
In the end, it's the lodger who packs his bags and leaves, and the family is left alone with sickness and decay to cope with.
Was there any personal element involved in the choice or development of this story?
Yeah, I think the reason that the story works is because it touches most people, because most people have experience of that, or certainly will have experience of that. Yes, there was sort of, I mean, none of my family turned into Beatles or anything, but there was illness. And I know myself from I've only been in hospital once. I'm not a sort of regularly ill person, but I had one operation once and spent just a week in hospital. It was while I was actually at the school here. And that was about the time that I actually thought of using that story, because that kind of recuperative feeling, where what I had was a knee operation, which of course everybody said would finish my dance career and everything. And it was Christmas, the week before Christmas, and I was in a hospital up by Wembley or something, and my parents were like 200 miles away, and nobody came to visit me or anything, so I was like stuck in this hospital bed with my career in tatters or whatever, and I think I just couldn't believe it. And the thing hurt. It hurt like I've never had anything really hurt. And that's kind of serious, you know, if you get walloped to something, or you get headache, you can do that. But when something really hurts, you're just like that. And I think that plus the way that my grandparents kind of went towards their end were the things which touched me. The kind of the waiting. That was the most... it's one thing which I really want to catch in this ballet, the kind of... the inactivity of the whole thing. Just the kind of slow, gradual kind of creeping change that tends to sort of happen to people who are... if an illness is kind of dragging on and you're just kind of praying for one thing or the other, and it just seems to go on forever.
In the last scene, after the lodger has left, the family is tormented by the need for action. The boy's sister, Greta, decides to sweep their difficulties away. Thank you.